Welcome everyone to this February meeting. We are celebrating the release of TEI Publisher 10. Hooray! After about 1.5 years of work on it. So please also excuse if I did not prepare a shiny, great presentation, but there was so much work over the Christmas break and New Year that we are all a little bit tired. So the idea for today would just be to give you a quick walkthrough, in particular for those people who did not want to read the gentle introduction guide, which has all of the information I would present today. So let's just have a quick walkthrough for, I don't know, 20 minutes or so, or 30, and then we can have extended session with discussion and questions. So let me share my screen. So if you go to teipublisher.org now, you might notice that there's no longer a single TEI Publisher application, but instead TEI Publisher itself was decomposed into various tools and profiles which you can recombine to create a digital edition. Consequently, we have a bit of a naming issue, because we have TEI Publisher, which from now on simply denotes the entire project. So TEI Publisher is the whole thing, whereas there are other tools, in particular the new application manager, which is called Jinks. So just to not confuse those, TEI Publisher is the whole product, everything together, and Jinks is the one tool which manages TEI Publisher apps. So, and if we look at what you can see on the project website, as well as when you install the Docker image locally, is that out of the box you get 4 different applications here in this highlight section on the landing page. So there's a documentation which also includes demos for some use cases. There's also a separate demo for correspondence edition. There's now a separate demo for what we call Workbench. So that's the previous annotation editor plus a new editor, which is called GinTab. And finally, there's Jinks, which is the central application manager. And all the other free applications which you see here have actually been generated via Jinks using blueprints, which you will find in there. So as an example, for practical hands-on, let's just start a new digital edition. So we click on open to open Jinks, and then if you're in here, the minimum you need to provide is the metadata fields, which then XSDB later needs to identify the application within the database and to install it properly. And for the purpose of this demonstration, we will just use 3 sermons of the theologian Karl Barth, which are already in the demo data, so you could relatively easily reproduce this. So we will just call it Karl Barth Predigten. There it also is. And then from the profiles, if we would just run it like this without checking anything, then we would basically get an empty application, but we want some data to actually work with. So we include this demo data profile. What profiles are and how we distinguish the different types of profiles is all explained in the documentation. But basically, each profile provides an end-to-end implementation for a particular aspect of a digital edition. This can be a technical aspect, like say here we have Docker support or support for sitemaps. But it can also be like, say, a scholarly aspect. So things like particular features which are required for certain types of editions. And there are also helpers, like you can add DocBook support, chat support, you can enable Markdown output and other things. But to start with, we keep it simple. So we just select the base profile plus the demo data. It's also important to note that obviously you cannot combine every profile with everything, any other profile, because they have quite specific, at times, requirements concerning the structure of the data and so on. So for example, to enable entity registers only makes sense if your data does actually have entities marked up. Otherwise, it will not have any effect. Okay, we just start with those two and run apply. And now for the first time, this takes a little bit because it assembles a configuration, a merge configuration from all the profiles included, copies all the files, and then creates a package, installs that into the database. So that takes a moment the first time. On subsequent runs, this will be a lot faster because then it does just incremental updates. So now if we look at this generated app, this is out of the box TEI Publisher app, but we can see 3 sermons from 1915. And if we click on them, they display okay. Not everything is perfect, so we can see that this Bible quote, it should probably come with a little bit of margin, and the link to the Bible citation should be proper, so this won't work at the moment. But we have not customized this in any way. So what you see is just a default output generated by TEI Publisher. And I would like to point out that a lot of work also went into reviewing those default ODDs. So TEI Publisher.odd now covers a lot more cases in TEI out of the box than it did before. Certainly not everything, because TEI is way too complex to do that, and you also would not like to have features formatted in a way which then might be completely wrong for your data. So this looks already quite good. Now let's add something so we can see that we obviously have places marked up here. Yeah, so you can see this is in gray, and there's even a pop-up already working out of the box. I think we also have some people. Okay, maybe not in this one, certainly further down in the notes. Yeah, we have some people marked up. And yeah, this works out of the box because the register data, so the list of people and places, is already there and was found. But let's extend this a bit. We just go back to Jinks, and then we add entity registers because obviously we have those. So we click apply again. Now you can see that it went a lot faster, and you see which files were updated. We can go back to the call board and load it again. So now not much has happened, but you can see that we have something new in the menu bar. We have people and places, or I should probably switch to English. So we have places, we can go to places, we can search for places. Let's take Savenville. We can follow the documents which have those places. Savenville is obviously in every one because that's where Karl Barth was located. So with just clicking this profile, we added people and places, and we can browse through it also through the places. Okay, so what's next? We would also like to have those places and people appear next to the text. So if we look at the text, there should be a sidebar which lists the people which appear in this particular sermon. And for this, we can edit this JSON configuration here. So that's the kind of central configuration for the whole application generation. And you can change it yourself to adjust particular features. So every profile contributes certain views and features, but also configuration properties to the configuration. You can mostly find them if you click next to a profile on this eye. Then this is the documentation for this particular profile. In many cases, it's still a bit lacking and needs to be extended, but important information should be there. In particular, here we see that this has this documentation configuration fragment. And there's also some explanation of what you would need to do to have to be supported by this feature. So what we can do is simply enable the register feature also for the document view. That's this fragment here. So we would just change the configuration, add that here, and then click I again. And now if we go back and have a look at the document, you can see that we automatically get register data now in this right-hand sidebar. Important to note is also that within TEI Publisher 10, we decided to have a certain layout system, which is documented in the documentation. And it has a certain structure which always keeps the same. Obviously, the theming can be adjusted, so how things are displayed, how a sidebar is displayed can be changed, but the principles, so the abstract ideas are always there, namely that there's always a region before the text, then there's a content region, and then there's an after content region, and each of those regions also has a before, which is for the toolbar, or here just to show this button to hide that. So there's a certain system behind it, and each profile can contribute fragments of content to each of those layout regions. So that's also an important and powerful concept in TEI Publisher 10. That you have this layout system, and each profile can contribute something to somewhere within this framework. And we try to keep this quite abstract. So that's also why we call the right sidebar not the right sidebar, but it's the after sidebar, because obviously for right to left languages, you have to revert that. So we try to keep it quite abstract, so you can change it, and it also adopts with different kinds of themes. So now we have this. Then next step we may want to do is just to change the theming a little bit. So we want obviously a different logo. We may want a different background image. So what we can simply do is go to Files, which shows us the database content of this application, which was generated. So we can go to Resources, Images, and just upload a few files here. And I already have 3 prepared. So we uploaded those. And now we just need to change the config to reflect that. And things like that would go under theme. And then we could say, so there's the logo. And you can see that the editor has a schema in the background, so it helps you by making suggestions of properties that you could enter at this point. So we need the image. And since this will be CSS, it's always relative to the CSS directory. So we need to go up to images, and then we use logo white.png. And for the menu bar, we want to have some background image. And again, we do images. And we are using this type.jpg. And then we want a splash screen image. There we just do image and say, and then images. JPEG. And then the next thing we may also want to change is the font, for example. So we could say, is that right? Yes. We could say for the content, we want a non-serif, so sans serif font family. And here I could just specify one, but it's actually better practice to use the predefined variables. And in this case, I would use Jinks base font family, which is sans serif already. And then I could just do apply. Hopefully now works, and reload. And you did see the splash screen. We have changed the font. You can see how the background has changed. You can see the logo has changed. So that was pretty straightforward. Then what else can we do? Obviously, we may want to have a landing page as well. So landing page, that's like an about the project page, similar to TEI Publisher's own homepage. So we could just add a landing page. So, and then we want to also change what's displayed there. Let's see, landing, because for the hero, let's just do for the hero image, we want our Karl Barth portrait. So I have it like this, then we do apply. And now there's one thing to note, namely, if I now change to the application again, you will see that it looks weird. So that's not right. Why does that happen? Because the landing page feature, it adds an ODD of its own. And if you add an ODD to an existing application, then as TEI Publisher user, you already know that you have to regenerate, recompile that ODD. So we can do that by clicking on the action fix ODDs here. So actions are also something profiles can contribute. And those are little utilities which do certain jobs. So those actions which you see here, they will always be there, but there are particular profiles like the static generator, which will add an action of its own, which you can click. Okay, so let's go back and reload, and it should look better. So, and now we have already, the Karl Barth portrait in the background. We would obviously need to change the text being displayed. That's TEI, so there's a TEI document we could now start changing to adjust what is being displayed here, and obviously also the highlights. That's all in TEI. This you can modify. So let's see, where are we time-wise? Yeah. Then other things we could do would, for example, be so let's say we want the option for users to just get a markdown output. then we could select that here and just say apply. And going back and then to the documents, yeah, we should be able to now see Markdown. So there's a Markdown preview and a raw Markdown text. I will select the okay. Now I did run into this problem, which I just explained. I need to click Fix ODDs because Markdown output adds another ODD into the mix. So we have to recompile. So, but now going back, should be able to see it. Yeah, so now we have some Markdown output. And I found this Markdown output option. It's generated via ODD. Yeah, so you have an ODD output now, Markdown. Obviously, it's very limited, so it can only do like headings, paragraphs, lists, tables, stuff which can be represented in Markdown. Footnotes do work, but not in this internal viewer because it does not support the footnote extension. Anyway, I find this quite useful, for example, to just feed text into, say, an AI or vector database. Yeah, so I've already done that, and it works much better with this kind of cleaned up text. So let's see what else do we have. Yeah, so one thing which you might be missing if you know TEI Publisher 9 and earlier is the annotation editor. So that's now also a separate feature which you can add to the application. However, you need to make sure that this matches your workflow. What you also have is JinTab, which is like the brother of the or sister of the annotation editor. Slightly different in that you can actually edit in what you see is what you mean style. So now I added this, and we have this new button here, Edit in JinTab, which now allows me to open that document. You also see immediately that there will be red down there. That's because JinTab is very strict about the schema being used. The editor has its own internal schema. Why is that? Because, well, it's impossible to map the whole complexity of TI into like a two-dimensional visual editor. Yeah, that just doesn't work because in TI you have loads of elements which can be either block or inline. Yeah, so this kind of stuff won't work in every case, and it's impossible to make it work in every case. Yeah, so you need to decide what how your TI looks like, and what kind of editing you need. So out of the box, JinTab only provides like a limited amount of elements which it supports, but you can change that in the configuration. There's a schema underlying where you can change it. But in any case, this red warning is there to point out that you are missing here certain elements. In this case, the Bibble element is unknown to JinTab. Other than that, you can now edit things here like in a text editor. Oops, what happens? Why? No. Need to close that first. Now for this liebe Freunde, it somehow doesn't work. I don't know why. Yeah, here it does. Okay. That's with salute. Okay, so maybe I don't know. Anyway, so that's an editor you can play around with. I had a talk together with Joe Wojciechowski at the TI conference last year about this, so you will find it on e-Editiones, and you can watch that, and it will give you a bit of more background. yeah, so looking at things, basically that's what I wanted to show. Maybe one thing, workflow-wise, yeah. So now I have done everything inside the database. So what I did, my application, my CloudBart application now, it will be just inside the database. So I definitely would need to download it, and I have two options for that. So there's the download, which gives me a XAR file, which is a zip file I can extract, or I have the sync option. The sync option on this machine won't work because here we are running within Docker, and it would only sync into Docker. But that's all documented. Just want to point out that that would be the next step for me to download the app. Then I would obviously unpack it locally. I would commit it to Git, and then continue developing that way, always having this backup on the file system. No? So that's one. And obviously, I can also now just try out things. So if I decide I don't want the GinTab editor, I can also just remove it again. That also works, and then it will be gone. Yes. So we are half an hour in, so I would just finish with 2-3 slides I prepared. So from our perspective, TEI Publisher 10 is only a fundament. It's a fundament on which the community can build. Yeah. And the reason for that is that it's impossible for us to overlook all the scholarly fields in which TEI and TEI Publisher might be used. So this kind of domain-specific knowledge that needs to come from the scholars themselves. Yeah, so also concerning the examples which have been added, those are obviously examples we know very well ourselves and where we know the research questions behind them and so on. But we definitely, at this point, would like to invite and also need the community to discuss about what additional profiles would be great to have, what are the use cases, what would the example be to integrate, and so on. Other things obviously would also be reusable blueprints, nice themes, workflow utilities. Yeah? So blueprints are basically configurations which are already prepared for a particular use case. So if you look at the apps which come with TEI Publisher, so the documentation and demo, the correspondence, those are all blueprints because they are pre-configured examples. And finally, let me point out that TEI Publisher, as ever, is community-driven project. Yeah, so it's basically the community which should determine the roadmap. So we don't want to. So we don't have a big plan about what we want for the future, because it's more important that there is interaction and feedback about that, and then we together decide what we want. So what's definitely already in the works at this moment is there will be a profile for annotations and display targeted at a DTA format. So that's a Deutsches Textarchiv. That's quite a widely used format. And this would actually be in parts also such a blueprint. So a profile which you can then extend to create your own application based on DTA customization of TEI. Then what's also already being worked at is another theme. So at the moment, TEI Publisher 10 only has one theme. It's this theme-based 10. But the idea is that this is extensible. So we paid quite some attention to designing this in a way that you can actually extend it and apply your own design. And what will be coming is the USWDS. I did miss one letter there, I think. Design system. So that's the one recommended for US government agencies. And something I also already talked about on other occasions is a new profile for DTS. So that's distributed text services. There will be a complete re-implementation, which then will also support the newest version of that protocol, plus all the features. So the old implementation in TEI Publisher, it was limited. Okay, then finally, let's also talk about or say thanks to those who actually contributed funding to TEI Publisher 10. So this time it was in particular the Digital Humanities Lab at the Jagiellonian University in Krakow, Office of the Historian at US Department of State, then the Polish Academy of Sciences, and last but not least, the Swiss Dash contributed funding with respect to the static generator. However, a bigger part of the development was still cross-financed by Jinks, which is the company most core developers, including myself, work for. So we just had a look, and it was just since September 25, 380 hours. So you can translate that into money. It's quite a lot. Yeah, so for the future, we do also, well, at least I am thinking about a few challenges and or rather problems in this case, because I do not really know the answer. I mean, basically, so TEI Publisher 10 and Jinks, that's another step forward to work ourselves out of the job. Yeah. Because obviously it makes it much easier for scholars to actually get started with the first steps towards publishing as a simple edition. So, and since we developers are mostly cross-financing ourselves with exactly this kind of project work, yeah, we are definitely working ourselves out of the job with what we do. That's short term, maybe not so much a problem, but long term, I also see. I mean, I now work with AI and agents since yeah, maybe just 6 months, 9 months, I don't know. But if I look at the progress, then I would say there will come a time rather soon where AI will be able to handle many of the customization steps you need to create an application, like the TEI Publisher-based applications we do. However, we all know that this is only possible because we, the humans, help the AI and provide all the tools and the knowledge it requires. So I can say that just into rewriting the documentation, we invested, yeah, basically the whole Christmas break. So it's a lot of work, and it helps because now if I point my AI agents at this documentation, I can see that they are already able to do a lot more and accomplish a lot more than they could before. However, this obviously means that financing a project like TEI Publisher increasingly becomes a problem. And I just would like to finish with that and pose it as a question for the future, because I do think that it should be the community's role also to rethink how open source can and should be financed in the future. Yeah, so thanks a lot. And then let's open the floor for questions, comments, and so on.
May I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Maybe it's not the most urgent one, but you said you're thinking about a profile for DTS. What would that actually do? Would it connect to the API that is published and sort of allow navigation and selection, etc., without actually having the texts on site or online, or is it something else completely?
Well, it would first of all be an implementation of the DTS protocol, which provides an abstraction layer between collections of TI texts. Yeah, and it has different features, like you can obviously retrieve entire text, but you can also retrieve just passages. You can look for passages. You can find passages. So it's in particular interesting for data exchange between editions, I think. And it has always been my dream to basically have this in every TEI Publisher instance, because it would mean that then all the TEI Publisher-based editions, they could just communicate with each other out of the box and use their data. So just imagine if for this call BART, yeah, you notice there were those Bible links. No? So just imagine that I could have a DTS endpoint server somewhere, and I could ask there, okay, now give me Matthew 1:13, yeah, and it would produce that passage and hand it over to my application so I can display it. So that would be like a distributed system. Where editions can benefit from each other's data and information.
So it will be both a server and a client, essentially, or
yes, well,
you sort of explained about being a server, but also as a client.
Yeah, well, there will certainly be client-side library functions within TEI Publisher, which you could use exactly for that purpose. Right. So I mean, this Bible example was not out of the blue. So that's something I actually already implemented, somewhere. So, I see TEI Publisher as, on the one hand, it could be a DTS client and retrieve information from other instances, or it can act as a server towards those other instances and provide data to them.
That's extremely interesting, especially as I'm contemplating implementing a DTS server or DTS-like server. So very interesting, and I'll talk to you maybe offline.
Yeah, sure. I could already point you to the code. So I've been working on it quite a bit.
Okay.
Not 100% finished, but also not super far away.
Great. Thanks.
Joe, what's next?
Thanks, Lars. First of all, thank you, Wolfgang and Magdalena, for all of your work over the holidays on documentation that you described. And I was wondering if you could maybe take the opportunity to tell us a bit about the changes to the documentation that you made, and are there significant new sections or parts that you're especially proud of, that you think will be of great use and interest to users of TEI Publisher?
Yeah, so obviously a lot of sections had to be rewritten because they now differ. The architecture differs substantially from what TEI Publisher 9 and before was and how it worked. So this affects in particular, say, things like HTML templates. That's something I did not mention in my talk, but there's a complete new templating system behind, which allows for much better customization. Web components have also changed in that they are now actually stylable, things like that. So there's a whole range of new sections, and we therefore decided that we need to split the documentation. So it's no longer just a single document, but there's the gentle introduction, which will basically give you a walkthrough like I did today, essentially also using the same Karl Barth sermons as an example. So if you want to revisit, you could read through that. It will give you all that information. Then the other part would be the reference guide, which has more detailed explanation about those things mentioned, like HTML templating, the CSS styling, and page layout, all those topics which are important. And we had some discussion about how much do people actually want to read. Yeah, so which is why then Lars also started a quick summary of links, which is this TLDR document. So for those who would like to have a really quick start, they should just go there and you will see how to install a TEI Publisher instance via Docker, and what links to follow from there.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay, am I next?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for the presentation and all the effort that you have put into this. I'm afraid I missed the very beginning, so I apologize if I'm asking something that you have already covered. But I was wondering if you could say a word on how code customizations will migrate across future TEI Publisher updates. I understood that was one of the aims, facilitating that was one of the aims of the transition to TEI Publisher 10. And if I imagine customization could be thought of as profiles of their own, but they will certainly be based on, or many of them will be based on stock profiles. So the stock profiles will be updated and the customized profiles will have to integrate the new functions of the base profile, so to say. But maybe I'll stop talking and ask just how do you imagine that? Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks for the question. That's actually something I also forgot to talk about. So basically with TEI Publisher 10, what we did was to add a lot more extension points into the configuration. So say in TEI Publisher 9, if you wanted to add a custom API endpoint, yeah, you would usually just write it into this custom API.xql and then change custom API.json. Now you actually have extension points for this in the config.json. So you can just register an additional API implementation and open API specification on top of what's already there. And Jinks will then merge that together. So in the end, you have all those APIs, also the ones you inherit from other profiles, available. That's also how profiles are mostly implemented. Yeah, many of the profiles are really simple in terms of the code they contribute. Because there are clear extension points where they contribute things. So they can contribute CSS, obviously, and custom endpoints. They can contribute views or few fragments which go into page views, this kind of stuff. So there are a lot more of those extension points. So in fact, it should be a lot easier if you create your own application to make sure that all your custom code is really your custom code. So it does not conflict with any of the code which might be updated from other profiles or by other profiles. Nevertheless, it's still sometimes necessary to override what's coming from a standard profile, and then you might get conflicts during updates. However, Jinks actually keeps track of all the files and keeps hashes of the content. So it will notice if there's a potential conflict, and it will inform you about it. And whenever you are informed about a conflict, it's up to you to decide, okay, no, this is actually expected. So, and then you can, in the config, mark it as ignore, and then it will just be ignored in the future, and you won't get the warning anymore, but the file will not be overwritten, obviously. Or you could say, no, this was an unintentional change, yeah, and just undo it, and then it will override it. So yeah, my hope is that with TEI Publisher, then it definitely became much easier to avoid running into this kind of issues where after a while you have a hard time merging your customized code back into the next version of TEI Publisher. So I hope we are now able to split that up all so nicely that it's at any point clear what your custom code is and what TEI Publisher standard code from profiles is.
Thank you. Sounds very helpful. Thank you.
But for sure, in this respect, there's still more work also to be done. Yeah, on Slack, it already popped up that like this one file annotation config XQL. Yeah, it had a problem because there were two versions coming from different profiles. So there will still be some issues like that popping up, but then we need to address those, because in this case, clearly, the annotation config XQL, it should not be overwritten. There should be the same kind of extension mechanism which allows you to replace or add another one. So I also think there will probably be rather soonish a bug fix release, because we already identified several smaller issues thanks to user feedback, so which are relatively small fixes, but still will be helpful.
I don't have a question, but since Jill just asked in the chat about a specific thing that in our documentation, the title is always the same, I told him in the chat already that we are aware that there are some SEO issues there. I would consider that. And the good thing is, which might not have been that clear, the USWDS design system, by making sure this works in TEI Publisher, such design systems also make sure they force you in SEO things, and you have the correct elements that should be there, and we need to get them dynamic. It's not very easy in some areas, because obviously for your different documents, part of the title for a web page should come from the TI. So there are things to do. Some things will already happen with the USWDS profile, but certainly not everything. But good news is afterwards, other design systems will have it way easier to support and use TEI Publisher as well, because we will make sure it's not the USWDS design system for everyone then, but you can use different design systems with TEI Publisher in the future.
Yeah, plus let me point out in this respect that quite some work in TEI Publisher 10 also went into the web design, and big thanks to our web designer Julia, who did a great job on the design, I think. Even though not everyone will like it, but that's okay. I mean, we had to decide for something, and you can always change it. And hopefully it's now easier to change than it ever was.
Okay, I just got a warning. We will be thrown out in 5 minutes. Something went certainly very wrong with this Teams setup, and that's on me. But perhaps something last, because it feels like this whole thing could close in a few minutes.
Okay, so if anyone has a burning question, then now is the time to ask it. Otherwise, yeah, we have Slack. You can send emails.
Yeah, I'm on a mobile connection, so sorry for just jumping in. But thank you, Wolfgang, also for raising the question about the future financing. I think it's an important issue to raise. Obviously, we're not going to solve this in the remaining 3 or 4 minutes, but I take note of it, and I guess it's also one for the upcoming for the remainder of the year, one to address also perhaps in a more formalized manner. And I would look forward also to your ideas based on other open source projects. Once they gain traction, what models seem to work well there. So thank you for raising that one. Just a comment.
Okay, so Magdalena, you raised your hand.
Yeah, hi. I wanted to make a point that what we managed to do is not only, thanks to these big additions or to what we think about things, but also to the very, very many much smaller projects that were our guinea pigs that brought us the volume of very different use cases to allow us to notice the similarities to generalize, to abstract away. Yeah. So and I think most of you who are here might have been a part of such a project.
Very true. Okay, so then before we are forcefully thrown out, I would say thank you very much for listening, and yeah, hopefully see you again. If you still have questions, don't hesitate to ask in Slack or elsewhere. And yeah, have a good evening or day. And until next time, bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.